Black, white, Latino, a number of people, young people have come out quite on their own and have gone into the street and have begun to raise the issue and remind the people of the contradictions that still exist in this society. And then people began to attack them. People began to say silly things, raise questions about their behavior, and then the greatest indignity so far was when they tried to connect the murder of 2 innocent policemen to the demonstrations taking place in the street all over the country. And now they say that it is the anti-police, these are anti-police demonstrations, as though the people in cities all over the country are mad at the New York City police. And the only reason they are in the street is that they are anti-New York City cops. See, it's just silly. But as we start, our brother Lumumba Bendele is with us. And he's one of the key organizers of the initiatives in the street. And I wanted you to hear from him. Brother Shaw is with us. He's also one of the organizers. And a little bit later on, I want him to tell you about something that the organizers are planning to do around the NBA All-Star Game. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
But I just wanted you to hear from our brother Lumumba Bendele, hear from these brothers and sisters in the street. He has come to represent them and to spend a few minutes with us. So would you welcome Lumumba Bendele?
So I bring you greetings on behalf of the many young people, and despite the gray hair, I am attempting to represent those young folks today. And I'm saying attempted because I'm in my mid-40s. And the people that you've seen on TV, the people that you are hearing about, the people that Brother Bob was talking about, are young people that range between the ages of 14, 15, and some of them into their mid-20s. And it's significant to talk about the age of these young people because, number one, these are our family. As the media attempts to criminalize these young people, as some of our leaders attempt to assassinate their character, do all of these things, we need to be very clear that these young people are us. They're your children, they're your cousins, they're your nephews. They are the young people that most of our folks have forgotten about. And it's significant because these young people carry a spirit in them that I have not seen in a very long time. Somebody asked me, what is this fire that these young folks have? And I had to tell them the last time I saw that kind of energy and fire was in the 80s in South Africa, Soweto. These young people are very clear about what their task is at hand. Despite what you may hear, there are some very clear demands that they are waging right now. Very clear. Not only in Ferguson, but here in New York City. Very clear demands. And they're fearless. And they're determined. So I bring you greetings on behalf of this movement that is happening around the country. I invite you to participate in some of the actions that are happening. In fact, this year has been declared the year of resistance and resilience. So as people think that the activities are beginning to die down, in fact, they are just beginning to ramp up. So you will hear a number of announcements that are beginning to happen. In fact, today there was an announcement of a part of that particular campaign. But I invite you to go to fergusonaction.com, that website that lists all of the activities that are happening around the country. In New York City is significant, and you can go to thisstopstoday.org to be caught up on the activities that are happening in New York City today. So I invite you again to participate, to contribute, but more importantly, to support and embrace the young people that are out on the streets, that are out doing these things, and recognize that they are us. They are a continuation of our liberation movement. These are young people who have learned significantly, not only from our victories, but from our mistakes. These young people, in fact, in Ferguson, close a lot of their rallies and sessions with a brief statement by Assata Shakur. These are young folks who are just now becoming introduced to her. But it's important that we recognize that they are a continuation of our liberation movement. And what we do right now to invest in them, to support in them, will matter to our children after that. So I thank you for inviting me, and I ask again that you welcome those young people as you see them in the streets, contribute to the movement, and support them. Thank you. FergusonAction.com.
Anybody else need to hear that? FergusonAction.com. And there was another one you said.
ThisStopsToday.org.
I like that one. ThisStopsToday.org. Keep in touch with the things that are being planned. As the young people are going to stay in the street, they refuse to be silenced. And we appreciate that. And remember, you have the letter, right?
Yes, sir.
Y'all did get the letter.
Yes, yes. And they appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, good. Letters, well, you all have copies of the letter, right?
Yes.
The letter is signed by a number of people who were active in the movement throughout the 1960s, early 70s. A lot of community, a lot of political activists from around the country. Still here, still very much a part of what is going on. All right, I want to move it quickly. One of the things that, by way of just giving the background information, I want you to leave here really clear about what we're doing and why we think that it is important. Whenever we say no justice, no profit, people say, yes, hit them in the pocketbook. That really does work. And it really does work. And the plan that we have came from the Cincinnati Black United Front, where they imposed economic sanctions on the city of Cincinnati. They targeted tourism in the city of Cincinnati, and over about a 3 or 4 year period, they were able to acquire, achieve, accomplish every goal, every demand that they set, including restructuring the Cincinnati Police Department. Because it really does make a difference if you hit them in the pocket.
That's right.
It really does make a difference if we use our economic leverage, if we use our spending power as a political tool. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because as the marches continue, some of y'all are not going to march. Some of us have marched and marched. Some of y'all ain't never marched. Not going to march. However, economic sanctions is something that everybody can participate in. Everybody can become a part of and really make it work, make it effective. But one of the things that is happening in New York City right now, there's this so-called dispute between the mayor and the police department. And that dispute between the mayor and the police is really nothing more than a distraction, because the mayor refused to apologize. The police have insisted on an apology, and when we say the police, it's not really fair to the police to say the police. There's one hostile segment in the police department, because there are even policemen who are not engaged in criminal behavior. You know, there are policemen who actually do the job that they were hired to do. There's good cops. People always say, you know, there's good cops. Nobody's, of course, yes, they're good cops. We know they're good cops because we know them personally. But we also know that there are bad cops. And the bad cops are trying to characterize the entire police department as their police department. So they're involved in a dispute with the mayor. But the problem is that even if they kiss and make up, it does not change anything that affects the lives of black people in this city. If the mayor and the police continue to become friends and begin to work together, it's not going to change the quality of life for black people. The schools still don't work. The income gap is still 20-to-1. All of the contradictions in this city will remain in place, because patching up this dispute between the mayor and the police has nothing to do with improving the quality of life for black people in New York City.
That's right.
Everything will still be the same. And so to focus on this dispute between the mayor and the police is a distraction that takes us away from dealing with the very real critical issues that affect the lives of our people in this city and around the country. And so We just want to be clear. We want to move past that, the mayor and the police. And there are some things that we are saying specifically about police reform. And the way that this sanctions committee is structured is that it is made up of a number of other organizations, and that those numbers of organizations continue to grow. And it is still open for other organizations, groups to become a part of the New York City Sanctions Committee. And in the Sanctions Committee, there are policy committees. And there's a political policy committee that is working on the goals or demands that we are making in terms of politics and legislation. And there's an economic policy committee that is working on the goals, demands that we are rolling out for economic change in this city. Now, I want to begin with you understanding what we are saying about the police department and with the kind of things that need to happen with the police department. But I want you to know it's not coming from just me. And when we say that there are good policemen, we know the good policemen, and some of them are here tonight. And our brother Damon from Blacks in Law Enforcement of America is going to come and from the police, professional law enforcement people, tell you what their group, they're part of that policy committee, what they have determined would be in the best interest of the police and the community, and understand that it's coming from people who are active right now in law enforcement. So would you welcome Blacks in Law Enforcement?
I want to thank Bob Law for having us down here. I think it's very important for Black law enforcement to have a voice in the issues that go on in the Black community. What is really key is that what we see on mainstream media when they talk about oversight in law enforcement and when they talk about a statewide special prosecutor. Black law enforcement organizations have been saying this for the last 4 or 5 decades, that something needs to be done with accountability of law enforcement. Now, we see the politicians, they have oversight in the banking system, they have oversight in the automotive system, but one thing you will constantly fight is oversight in law enforcement. When you look at the Eric Gardner case, you had a video. You had the commissioner saying that it was a chokehold, and chokehold was against policy and procedure. You had the medical examiner saying it was a homicide, but the DA was unable to bring a bill to indict. Now, when we say you want an independent prosecutor and investigator, but nobody's talking about legislation to define what police criminality is. Because you can't bring somebody up on charges if there's no law to bring them up on charges on. So as law enforcement professionals, we say any law enforcement professional that is certified by the state, which every law enforcement in New York State, we are peace officers of the state. So we all get a certificate saying that we are peace officers of the state of New York. So that means we met certified training that was certified by the state. Now, if we violate that training, and if we violate the powers that's given us by the state to use deadly force, and we violate policy and procedure of the department that we work in, we need legislation to define that and say it's a crime. See, because what the officer did, he violated policy, but it still wasn't a crime to violate policy and to violate training. So when we talk about today is Martin Luther King's birthday, but there was a main goal, and the goal was to change legislation. So we have to define the legislation that we needed to make. We have to make what they're doing a crime, and we have to change the language from not police brutality, but police criminality, because what these officers are doing is a crime, and we have to use our language in that manner. Now, the next step is what? Statewide special prosecutor and an investigator. Now, the talk is you can't have your local DA investigate the local police department, no matter where you're at. You could be in New York City, you could be in Westchester where I live, you could be out in Long Island. Because a lot of times, the police culture and the police family, we are related.
Yes.
Cousins, nephews, aunts, uncles, all spread out into different departments. So when you have an investigator from the DA, they come from the local police department. So how can they investigate their own? And then they have to try to preserve that relationship, the ongoing, because the DA needs the police department to investigate crime so they can bring charges. So it is a bias, and we know that. But the problem is, we can't get the politicians to act on it. Now, we just had Governor Cuomo come down, he met with the police unions. But what people don't know is that there was a young brother named Limhard who was shot and killed in Newburgh. And the Newburgh City Council voted for an independent investigator and prosecutor. They sent the request to Albany. And the same governor that's meeting with the unions denied Newburgh an independent investigator and prosecutor. So we have to understand the tricks that the politicians are playing, because that's what they're playing on us. And now you have the union going back and forth, but it's all about reform. We have to pressure our elected officials. As a black law enforcement organization, we ring through the